What if I told you that economic collapses aren't accidents, but profit machines? That every time your savings shrink, someone else's fortune multiplies? Stay with me for the next 10 minutes, and I'll show you the hidden pattern that's been transferring wealth for decades. Every empire believes that collapse is something that happens to others. But history has a troublesome habit. It returns whenever greed overcomes labor. It was the summer of 1971. While the world still believed in gold as the basis of confidence, President Richard Nixon appeared on television screens across America. With a calm voice and a cold face, he announced, "The dollar will no longer be convertible into gold." At that moment, money ceased to be real and became a promise. The American empire had just freed its currency from the shackles of metal. And with that, it also unleashed the power to create wealth from nothing. Until then, every dollar represented something tangible, a portion of gold stored in Fort Knox. But when that link broke, wealth ceased to be sweat and became calculation. Spreadsheets replaced factories, and banks replaced mines. The golden age of work was coming to an end. The age of speculation was born. In the following years, America experienced a paradox. Inflation on one side, abundance on the other. Prices rose, wages lagged, and yet some grew richer than ever before. It was as if the crisis were a language only a few could ride. Have you ever noticed that every financial crisis seems to create new billionaires? Is that just a coincidence? The 1970s became a laboratory where capitalism learned to feed on its own collapse, and it all began with an act of political desperation. The Vietnam War was draining resources. Public spending was exploding, and the government needed a solution that didn't require cutting privileges. So they created money, literally, unbacked paper, promises without gold. The decision seemed technical, but it was theological. The dollar ceased to be metal and became a belief. And like all beliefs, it needed priests. They worked on Wall Street. It was there that capitalism was transformed. Factories migrated, machines were shut down, and in place of production came speculation. Profit became abstract, and wealth invisible. Financial capitalism was born, the empire of promises. The old industrialists were replaced by new tycoons who built up debt and derivatives. While workers waited for their paychecks at the end of the month, these new lords multiplied fortunes in seconds with a click. It was the beginning of wealth without work, a wealth that depended on access. Not on merit, but on information. Not on production, but on collapse. What if I told you that the next crisis is already being engineered, and that someone already knows how to profit from it? The 1970s plunged into stagflation, high inflation, and a stagnant economy. Every economist's nightmare, but a paradise for those who knew how to bet against the system. Interest rates rose, markets trembled, and each new decline was an opportunity for a select few. Crises, which were once tragedies, became businesses. And in this new game, fear became fuel. When the people lost confidence, capital fled, and someone always knew where it would go. It was as if the ruin of the many was the seat of the empire of the few. As Detroit's factories closed their doors, New York's offices expanded skyward. The country that once ruled the world with steel and oil now ruled it with debt and illusions. In the 1980s, what began as a patch became a religion. The financial market was no longer just part of the system, it was the system itself. And each new crisis seemed only to strengthen those who claimed to be fighting it. The collapse stopped being a mistake and became a strategy. The recession, an opportunity. Unemployment, just a number. And so the world became accustomed to the idea that wealth can arise from nothing. In 2008, the spell was repeated. Promises multiplied into debts exploded again. Millions of homes, jobs, and dreams all in ruins. But in the shadows, a new group emerged, the crisis billionaires. Men who profited from the collapse they themselves helped create. It was the same pattern from 1971, now augmented by algorithms and derivatives. The same game, just with new names. Did you know that during this crisis, hedge fund manager John Paulson made $4 billion in a single year betting against the housing market? And the 21st century perfected the formula. When the pandemic of 2020 brought the world to a standstill, stock markets should have fallen. But they didn't, because fear once again was monetized. While millions lost income, a handful of tycoons saw their fortunes double. Today, wealth no longer requires gold or factories. It only takes a click. It only takes a belief. And as long as that belief lasts, the system remains. But what if it breaks? Because money without work is just a collective fiction. It depends on the faith that someone somewhere still believes. And that faith, like all faith, is fragile. It was so in Rome when the empire diluted its currency to finance wars. It was so in 1971 when the dollar lost its gold value. And it will be so again when the next crisis reveals the same secret, that all easy wealth exacts a price, and that price is always paid by those who believe. What history has tried to tell us is simple. Crises don't create billionaires by accident. They are created by a system that has learned to turn fear into profit. And the greater the fear, the greater the profit. So perhaps the question is not how to avoid the next crisis, but who needs it to continue existing? Because in the end, it's not collapse that scares power. It's stability. Peace doesn't create opportunities for control. Chaos does. And it is in chaos that empires are renewed. Not by force of arms, but by the engineering of belief. While people fear loss, the market creates new ways of promising. And promises today are worth more than gold. Wealth without work is not a historical accident. It is the fate of a system that has learned to reward those who understand the crisis and punish those who live within it. An elite that doesn't build, but manages ruins. That doesn't produce, but gambles. And as long as everyone believes the collapse is just a mistake, the cycle will continue, crisis after crisis. Billionaire after billionaire. But maybe there's a limit. A point at which even belief crumbles. When promises lose their meaning and money becomes just paper again. The sound of collapse is never loud. It begins as a whisper, a statistic that doesn't add up. A number no one understands. And when everyone realizes, it's too late. History doesn't repeat itself. It only destroys those who refuse to listen. If this has opened your eyes, don't just keep scrolling. This channel exists to reveal the patterns the financial elite don't want you to see. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video, where I'll show you exactly how to position yourself before the next engineered crisis. In the comments below, tell me, what was your biggest financial loss during the last economic crisis? Did you see it coming? And if you want to dig deeper, check out the link in the description for our exclusive newsletter where I share some incredibly controversial YouTube strategies. Remember, history doesn't have to repeat itself at your expense. Sign up now.